Episode 180, Ironman World Championship with Rebecca McKee. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Coach Rebecca McKee about her recent race experience at the Ironman World Championship in Kona. This race took place on October 13th, 2018, with the water temperature being 72 and rising to 82 degrees, and the winds were a lot more calm than they have been in years past. The water temperature was in the 80s this time. She is a coach and she is a very experienced person when it comes to racing and has a great amount of information and knowledge to share with me today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me again, Rebecca. I look forward to talking about Kona with you.
Thank you so much for having me again.
You're welcome. So what was it like getting to Kona a lot earlier than what most people can get? I mean, I know you got your slot back at Arizona last year, right? And now then you got here this time. What was it like?
Well, I think for me, living in Alaska, it makes a huge difference to get over to the island early and start acclimating to the heat, and also just being able to ride outside. By the time the middle of September rolls around normally for Alaska, the ability to go outside and ride is pretty non-existent. Although this year we had strange weather and just literally got snow recently, but the temperatures drop and it's just not the most ideal for training in Kona.
Wow. So I know you did World 70.3 this year, and you also won your age group at Hawaii 70.3 earlier this year. What was your training like going into Kona this year?
Well, I was in South Africa up until the 4th of September, so we had to kind of change gears really quickly. It was almost like, driving past that street you're supposed to turn on and doing a really fast U-turn. And so coming back from South Africa and having to deal with the time zone change and then ramp right up for Kona, fly to Kona, get there. It was really hectic. It actually probably wasn't the best in regards for me stress management wise. It caused me a lot of stress and anxiety, which I carried through the event, unfortunately. But once I hit the ground in Kona, literally the next day, I just started doing, big load, had a lot of 5-hour rides, a lot of 4-hour rides, just a lot of riding.
Right. So, I know you got some swims in while you're on the island before the race and not even at the nice pool they have up there. Did you have a certain way that you wanted to adapt your training being that it was on the island versus in training in Alaska or even racing in South Africa?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was really surprised at how cold it was in South Africa. It was actually colder in South Africa than it was in Alaska when we left. So I didn't expect that. And then when I got to Kona, it was actually much hotter than it's ever been that time of year for me. And after talking to a lot of locals and a lot of people that live there and spend time there year round, and as well as racers that were showing up on the island, everybody was agreeing that the temperatures were really high, and mainly because it sounded like the fog from the volcano had stopped. But like you said about the water temperature, even swimming for me in the bay, I felt uncomfortably warm, which I like to be warm. So that was something that I didn't expect. And that after being there 2 or 3 days and talking with my coach, we had to make some quick changes for how we were loading because it was too hot.
Right. So as far as your training goes, once you got onto the island, you were doing your biggest training blocks on the island so that way you could get the most adaptation that you could. What was your longest train days on the island?
I had a 2.4 mile swim. I did the practice swim. I did a number of 1.2 mile swims in open water. I had a 5-hour ride and a multiple 4+ hour rides. And then the only thing that we didn't do a lot of was running, simply because of, previous injuries. So I didn't want to load too much on the running that close to the race. And also it was just really warm. So the running was taking a lot out of me. So we broke things up and made a lot more shorter runs, but more often, if that makes sense.
So you were doing like 30, 45 minutes twice a day, stuff like that?
Well, probably more like an hour 15, hour 20. And then, the next day doing a 45-minute run and then maybe a 45-minute run a couple hours later, those types of things. Yeah. But I don't think anything over 15 miles the whole entire time I was there.
Okay. So did this impact your confidence level going into the race?
Yeah, a little tiny bit. There was some anxiety about not having a run longer than 15 miles. And we did change my race plan to accommodate that. But yeah, I agree. I don't know if I would say confidence as much as I knew what I was up against for competition. And you always kind of know the best in the world is going to be in Kona, obviously. And so I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. Yeah, for sure.
So you had expectations for this race then?
Yeah. It's always interesting. You hear a lot of interviews. I think that I've read someplace once that 10% of the field goes to Kona expecting to be on the podium, and the rest of the field is there for the experience. And so I think that when you kind of get into that space where you're really looking at the podium, I think the self-pressure is huge,
And this anxiety is not related to the other anxiety and stress that you carried from the travel and making sure you had everything. And getting your bike from South Africa to Alaska to Hawaii is another level of anxiety along the way. What are some tactics that you use to mitigate this anxiety level on all these different fronts?
Well, unfortunately, one of the things that I discussed with my husband after the race was that if I did not find a better way of coping with this stuff, that I was really going to need to take a step back and see if this was a good thing for me to continue to do. I don't know how well I managed things this year, and everything was compounding. It was like one stress led to another stress, it was really strange for me. And I think one of the best coping skills that I had was just being around people that supported me and, care about me and mainly just kind of told me to knock it off, and put up with me. It's just the simplest things, like going to the grocery store and just, I went into the grocery store one day to get coconut water, and there's like 50 different coconut waters. And I'm just standing there staring at them. I'm like, I don't know which one to get. It was just so bizarre. And the closer you get to the race, I think the more weird stuff like that happens and you stop being able to function. You're so focused on the race. And I think the people that care about you and love you and understand this sport give everybody a little bit of a pass. But yeah, I think that for me, there needs to be a little less personal pressure and probably a little bit more self-talk. That's what I think, telling yourself, hey, you're doing this for fun. This is the best place in the world to be. You'd rather not be anywhere else. It's there. When you think about it like that, all of that anxiety goes away and you're like, this is the most exciting thing ever, but when you're in the space of, should I put salt tabs on my bike or not? And your brain's just like, I don't know what to do. All this. I changed my kit for the race 4 times.
Right. I noticed that you wore a different kit from the 70.3 in Worlds. And it was also a black kit.
Right.
I was sitting there looking at the picture. I was like, I wonder why she wore a black kit versus a cooler kit.
So I was having a lot of problems with the way everything was rubbing me. And I think when you lean down for Kona, you get in the heat, all of your clothes start to fit you very differently. If you look at all the racers and how we end up looking by the time race day comes around, we kind of have a little bit of that overly chiseled, a little bit too lean look. And some of it, I think, is just from training in the heat and being on the island. I think some of it's from stress and anxiety. And of course, we're all fit and ready to go. But none of your clothes fit anymore. You're 4 or 5 pounds less, or, depending on who you are, than what you were, 6 weeks ago. And all of a sudden, everything that you own that's super tight isn't super tight anymore. And I literally bought my kit for the race the Wednesday before the race.
Really? So you didn't really train in it much?
At the expo, I went in Louis Garneau, and they had the kit that I'd been trying to find online. And I said, if it doesn't fit, can I bring it back? And they said yes. And I took it home, swam, bike, and ran in it over the next 2 days. And I was like, and this is what I'm wearing.
Wow.
And Waddy actually got the tank top that I wore during the race, the jog bra, I actually got from Waddy the Wednesday before the race as well. Yeah. So that was kind of crazy.
Wow. So to kind of talk about the race week here, going into it, you're buying new clothes that you're going to be using on race day, which, I mean, even as a coach, hey, don't do this. Don't buy anything new and use on race day. And you're sitting here going against all these superstitions that we know not to do. What else are you doing on that race week?
Well, I had an insatiable desire for sugar. I just could not turn it off. And I was like constantly, I don't know, I had donuts. I mean, yeah, I'm telling you, by the time I got to bike check-in and got to where I was leaving everything, I didn't put my foot pod on my shoes. I had to go back to transition and put my my foot pod meter on my tennis shoe. Yeah, it was just a really crazy. It's just kind of funny that it all came together. I mean, I think it kind of shows that you might look like you have it all together sometimes, but you just don't.
All right. So how many times have you been to Kona?
I think that was my 5th. Yeah, my 5th time.
Wow. And now the anxiety is starting to creep up more than ever, it seems like.
Yeah, I think there's always the pressure of, am I going to make it back here? I mean, you can go and sign up for almost any Ironman in the world, right? But you can't sign up for this one. And if things don't go right, or, you plan poorly for the day, or something just kind of goes a little bit sideways, that's it. Like, you just don't get to come back and make it happen again. You have to go and requalify, all the pressure, stress, and anxiety of that process. So I think that's, after you've been there so many years, I think the first couple of years you go and you're just stoked to be there, and you're there for the experience, and you kind of get there and start to learn how to race there. And then you kind of put a little bit more expectations on yourself.
Right. So as far as your training goes, the week of, you said that you had a little bit of an injury here. You wanted to baby a little bit. How are you dealing with this mentally going into the race?
Well, I have an amazing masseuse on the island and a couple of really amazing masseuses here in Anchorage. And, you always give credit to people all over. And I truly believe that nobody can really do this sport without a team of people. But he really kept me together. He worked on me a couple times a week. He gave me some extra time each time I saw him. And we just slowed down a little bit on the running. And I actually felt really good body-wise on race day. I felt really excited. But I will say, the week before the race, to add into the anxiety, I got in. I'm sure your listeners have heard by now, the jellyfish debacle. I don't know what to call it, the jellyfish incident. But during the practice swim, we basically, all of us swam into a massive, I don't know what they're called, school pod, but whatever it was horrifying. And it scared me. And I've kind of been in jellyfish before, but not like that. I mean, I was stung in 7 or 8 different places. My arms swelled up. I couldn't feel my fingers. I was really freaked out by the time I got to shore. A lot of people were being rushed to the med tents. And actually, I had a conversation with a gal on Facebook who during the race got into them again and kind of had a anaphylactic response, and she was done out of the water. That was the end of her day during the race. And so during the race, I felt, you can feel them. It's kind of a tingly thing but I've never actually been stung. I guess I've just kind of been around them. I don't really understand it. But what I'll say is that jellyfish encounter freaked me out pretty good. And I had a hard time getting back in the ocean after that, and only got back in one time, and only for about 20 minutes before the race, between that Saturday practice swim, the 2.4 mile, and the actual race. So there was a lot of things going on, and those, they were actually like little sores. So when you talk about, that was something I was trying to keep from on the island, that kind of stuff gets infected so quickly, staph and everything. So that was a challenge too. It just kind of, boosted the anxiety level 10 more times,
Wow. So whenever you actually think of checking in and going through all the expos and all this fun stuff, I know you're probably seeing Zip and Diamond and all your fun people out there at Quark. So what was this like at the expo here versus what it's been in the years past? Is it bigger, smaller? I know it's the 40th anniversary.
I love the expo at Kona. I think it's the best one at any venue that they do. There's a couple of other venues out there that are good, but Kona is the cream of the crop, right? And I think that there's vendors from all over the world that show up. There's people that you've never seen before, and it was really great to get in and see a lot of my sponsors. Waddy was there, and it was really great to get a jog bra from him. I'd been desperate to find one. And then the folks from Blue 70 were there, and they're always fun. Guy Crawford and Mike Olson are a ton of fun over there. And then we've got they had all kinds of people from different countries as well, which was pretty neat. But I was able to get in and see like the folks from Roca. They sponsored me for my sunglasses, and their new glasses are amazing. I'm just so I think they're really awesome if you haven't tried them, by the way. And I think also the Diamond folks were there. I was trying to think of who else was there. Cork was there. They were giving away these little cool medallions to put on your bike. So, there's always so much cool, fun swag at those venues. And just the ISM guys were at the bike count. So that was cool to see them. And Zip. I don't know if I really saw the Zip folks, but yeah, there's just a lot of, I think the expo, if you ever just get a chance to go to the expo in Kona, I think it's really worth the energy. Right.
So leading up to checking in the bike, did you have any issues with the bike?
No, I was really lucky, and I am really lucky that my husband takes really great care of me, and he had shown up on Wednesday night and had, changed out my tires and got my bike all ready. And so luckily, the one thing that I did not feel stress and anxiety about this year was my bike, but bike check-in stressed me out, and I just had to take deep breaths. I was taking my bike in and kind of going up over the curb, and it's just massive mayhem, and some guy riding a bike almost hit me, and I dropped all my gear, and I was just like, oh my God, you're just like, the stress levels like,
Wow. So how does bike checking go for you aside from that?
It went okay. I mean, I think those volunteers really go above and beyond. I think a lot of us are probably pretty stressed out and anxious, and but I think that it was a little bit confusing because they always seem to change. Like if we can leave our helmets on our bikes, if we're supposed to put our helmets in bags, if, where our shoes are supposed to be. I think it's always a little bit chaotic. They always seem to have more bikes on the pier every year. So they seems like we're a little more packed in every year on the pier, but it's just kind of, I think it kind of makes the whole thing really real all of a sudden too. And so, everybody's kind of in their own little world.
Right. So to talk about the day before the race already, you've already got checked in, the bike's checked in, all this stuff. What about from a nutrition standpoint? Are you, when you get a certain breakfast, lunch, and dinner in, what does this look like?
Well, as I've discussed with you before, I've kind of got a temperamental stomach. And so I stopped eating the night before the race, probably around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I don't eat anything race morning. I never have. And I take a gel before the swim. I get out of the swim and give myself about 10 to 15 minutes on the bike before I start taking in nutrition there. And then I just have to be really careful about how much I take in and how often. So talk about changes. I completely changed my nutrition for Kona. Never used the nutrition that I've used in Kona before. And I just started using it when I arrived on the island in September the 14th. I went and bought new stuff on the 16th. So another thing that you should never do. So I actually moved to using Carbo Pro and Scratch mixed together in my bottles, which I've never done before. And so that's what I used on the bike in my bottles. And then I was using the Goo Chews during the ride and stayed away from on-course nutrition because I was having problems with it my last couple of Ironmans. So I also took Coke in on the bike, which I've never done before. So yeah, it was just a lot of things last 6-7 weeks changes before the race. And then on the run, I stuck to my typical nutrition plan, which is, a gel every 35 to 45 minutes, and then as much Red Bull and cola as I can possibly consume.
Okay. Well, I saw a picture where you had a Gatorade bottle at Kona, but
That's right.
It wasn't Gatorade.
That's right. So I snag those bottles when I go to the expo or the swims. They always hand out those awesome Gatorade bottles, and they fit awesome in my X Lab. And they're also big enough to carry a concentrated solution in. And then when they're empty, it's okay to throw them away. And so I've actually got like 6 or 7 of those bottles, but they don't have Gatorade in them.
All right. So you're using Scratch and Carbo Pro, but you're still wanting to get that magic number of about 200 calories for you an hour.
Correct.
Okay. So, and you stop eating at 8:30 to 8 o'clock the night before the race. How did you sleep the night before the race with all this anxiety you've already had and the stress levels where it already was?
Yeah, I didn't sleep. Usually I do. I sleep fairly well, but this year I probably went to bed by 11 and I was up at 3:30 and I was just like, forget it. I'm getting up. Just the gun needs to go off.
Man. So whenever you get up, how far away are you staying from the actual transition area?
We really had a great place this year, and so we weren't even 2 miles away from the pier.
Oh, wow. So did you just walk over there the morning of, or did you drive?
No. My husband, Brendan, drove down and dropped me off, which was really nice because it makes it a little less stressful because all the gear you have to carry. You have to carry all your special needs bags, and you have the pump and, all the stuff that you're using for the morning. So it's still 2 miles is a long way to walk with all that stuff.
Right. So did he park and then just meet up with you later?
Yep, he parked and then he came on down and I met him. I always kind of go in, get all my stuff done, and then I leave the area and just go away from it and kind of find a quiet spot to calm the anxiety, the stress level down. And, and then there's a lot of people that are doing the same thing. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's trying to get into a porta potty. Everybody's trying to get their tires pumped. The helicopters are going by, and that woof, woof, that noise that they make. And, the cannons go off for the pro men and the pro women and then the men, and your heart rate's just like pounding out of your chest. And you're just like, calm down. I'm not going to have a heart attack before I get in the water. You're okay. It's almost like when they finally let you in the water, everything starts to get better. You start to, move into, okay, the gun's going to go off and I'm going to be able to do what I've been training to do. And when the gun does go off, everything gets better. Everything really does get better. But up until that moment, like I said, I definitely have to do a little bit better job next year on maintaining. I always tell myself that it is excitement, and I do believe that it is. But when it gets to the point that you're like lashing out and, making bad decisions, you're like, I need to calm down,
Right. So to kind of go backwards a little bit before you get in the water and get going, in transition, how are you setting up your Torhans here? Are you just putting water in that, or are you just using the scratch in the back and then on-course nutrition for the water? What is this?
So the Torhans is filled with concentrated Carbo Pro and scratch. And then as I go through the aid stations, I grab water and dilute it. And then the bottle in the back is a little bit diluted. So as I refill the bottle, it's getting diluted as the day goes on. Okay.
So you don't have any just regular water on your bike?
I do not carry regular water on my bike at all until, actually I don't. The only I'll grab water and, pour it on myself. I think this year I probably put some water on my bike at some point just so that I would have it to cool myself down. But I don't start out the day with water on my bike.
Okay. Because I know I was talking with one guy I interviewed about the transition area, and there's actually no way to get water in transition.
No, it's always surprising to me. It's like that too when you leave for the run. There's really nothing. I think they might have a little aid station, but it's kind of confusing to me. Like, I don't ever remember transition. I remember going into transition always, but I never remember leaving transition. It's a strange thing. I'm like looking at my watch and my data files. I'm like, did I leave transition? I had to have left, but what happened? So yeah, I don't recall anything like that in transition.
Man. So as you're leaving transition to go to a private place and just kind of get your mind right, what was your mindset going into the race? Did you have a certain goal or expectation as far as time goes?
I think everybody kind of hopes I think everybody sets time goals. I always allow myself some flexibility around those because of the weather. I was very surprised by the swim. I felt much stronger in the water. I felt way more relaxed than I have. And I felt like I had a really good swim. So I was really surprised that the swim time was almost an hour and 11 minutes. There was sticking to what you were asking about here, the bike was very, very close to what I had hoped that I could bike, what I really felt I could have done. But unfortunately, because of the weather, I think I could have gone faster. But the weather changes so much on the island, and I was just trying really hard to stick to my race plan, and I did stick to my race plan. But in the end, knowing what I know about the island and the weather, I probably could have gotten a little more out of the bike. And then the run, the time there was a few minutes off of what I was hoping for, but we had added some walking at some aid stations that I didn't really want to do. But, hindsight, you're like, maybe I shouldn't, but maybe that's why the day went as well as it did. That's the thing, right? You have to take some risks. You have to do some gambling. And for me, I never expected the day to be as fast as it was.
Really?
I mean, oh yeah. I think I've been riding on this island since 2004, I want to say. And I can count maybe on one hand a weather day like we had that day, especially on the bike. I mean, at one point I was going 39 miles an hour on my bike. Right? I was just like, okay, then this is the type of day we're going to have. Like, it was definitely a course record breaking year. And honestly, I went 5:15 something, and I think my fastest time in Arizona is a 5:15 something. I mean, I went 5:15 in Kona. So I believe that I could have gone faster as well. So, when you talk about time expectations, I was super stoked with it. I just don't know if it'll happen again. 40-year 40-year flood watch right there, whatever they call them,
Right. So as you're getting in the water, the pro men, pro women, and age group men get going. As you're getting into the water here, you become a celebrity for a brief minute with Triathlete Magazine.
Yeah. So Paul was standing on the edge of the corral there, and I saw him, and Paul and I have a funny history because he was on a trip to Alaska on his motorcycle, and I'm like, I don't know, I think it's 50 miles south of Anchorage, biking down there, and he recognizes my bike and stops me, and he's just randomly in Girdwood, Alaska, and I'm just randomly on my bike in Girdwood, Alaska. And he's just like, I cannot believe of all the people I run into in the world, I run into you in Girdwood on your bike. So I was pretty excited to see him there and, gave him a little smile. And I didn't expect the photo to go anywhere, but that was kind of cool.
Wow. So as you get in the water, how's your anxiety with the jellyfish here? Because, you talked a little bit earlier about the fear that you had even getting into the water before the race day, and now then you're going to be in here for a little bit more than an hour with all these jellyfish, potentially. Hey, everybody, I just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast, and I just want to let you know that I've enjoyed having so many people on this show, and I couldn't really do it without your support. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and being a part of what I'm doing. If you would, take a few moments to leave me a review over on iTunes. It would help me out tremendously. And enjoy the show. How's your anxiety with the jellyfish here? Because, you talked a little bit earlier about the fear that you had even getting into the water before the race day. And now then you're going to be in here for a little bit more than an hour with all these jellyfish, potentially.
I actually had been watching the jellyfish forecast, and it showed that it was going to be clear. So I actually thought we would be just fine on race day, but they had shown the jellyfish all the way through to like Friday. So I was kind of laughing about the thought when I was treading water that they just randomly disappear on race day. And, of course, people did get into them. And like I said, I got into them a little tiny bit. And when it started to happen, I did have a little bit of panic. The first thought was, I don't think I can swim through these again and be stung like I was stung before and keep racing, because at the practice swim, when I got out of the water, it was pretty bad. I was, drowning myself in vinegar, and I went home and, did Epsom salt and took allergy meds. I had done a whole bunch of things to try to get the pain to subside. And I was thinking, how am I going to bike for 5+ hours if I get this stuff all over my body again? But luckily for me, I only had a very small, I could feel it right on the side of my face, and that was it. And it wasn't, I don't know how sometimes you can get stung so badly and sometimes you can't. It's very confusing to me. I need to do some research, but I was surprised to hear that other people had gotten into them as bad as we had during the 2.4 mile swim. So, and the other thing that was kind of crazy, I think more than the jellyfish anxiety, was when we were getting into the water starting, the pro men were finishing. We could see them swimming by us before our gun went off. So, there's that feeling of, oh my God, we haven't even started the race yet, and these people are swimming in already. And so that was kind of a little bit of a, wow, there's people finishing the swim already. And then we got into a lot of men on the swim. It was really disappointing. And, by the time we catch those men, they're 15 minutes ahead of us, plus however slow we're swimming compared to whoever they are. And so it was really combative. It's probably the most combative Kona I've had, and disappointing. Some of the men were really vicious. I had one guy just kick me full on breast kicking, and it really takes the wind out of you. Right.
So whenever you're actually getting ready to get going on the swim and your can's about to go off, where do you line up? I mean, if there's a straight line across from left to right, where are you at amongst the wave of females?
I have to tell you, I change this every single year. So this year I was very close to the pier. I was almost as close to the pier as you could be inside our corralled area. And then I was probably 3 rows back this time. And last year I actually waited in the back and the gun went off and I let everybody go. But this year the gun went off and I was just around some really great people too. Everybody was just really nice. I think the women are a little bit nicer to each other anyway. And I mean, like one woman that just ran into me head on, or, you know, sideways head into me. I just kind of looked at her and she was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you're fine. You know, it's just kind of funny. I'm like, you're all right. Are you all right? You know, and she's like, yeah. And then we just started swimming again. So, yeah, that's kind of where I positioned myself this year.
Wow. So as the cannon goes off, you have a little bit of scrimmages with the men once you catch them. But overall, how does your swim go?
You know, I got on the feet of this really great woman. I don't know who she was. I was hoping to kind of see her at the finish line. But she was a cannon or a tank. I mean, she was a little bit bigger. And I don't mean like heavy. I mean like a taller, you know, bigger person. And she was just like this tank just swimming through people. And I probably made her crazy because I'm sure I touched her feet 100 million times and her pace was perfect. And at one point she was just swimming over men. And at one point there was a man completely underneath me. She had pushed him straight down and I swam right over him, never touched him. He was that far below me. And I was thinking to myself, this woman's amazing. I wanted to like hug her when I got out of the water. And the funny thing is I think she's in my photos at the finish, but I can't see her number. So I never went back to figure out who it was, but I had a really great draft. I felt like she was pacing really well. She was really strong in regards to like how consistent she was. And then also she kind of just cleared the way for us. But there were these times where you just like, we literally just stop and try to figure out where to go. You know, you're dead stop looking around, trying to figure out where to swim because you can't get around these people there without swimming over them. And it's just, it is frustrating for the women, I think. You know, I don't know how to fix it, to be honest. It's easy to complain besides giving us our own day.
Right. I mean, in a sense, it would almost make a lot of sense for the race officials here to say, hey, we're going to let 100 people go at a time based upon their qualifying time. I mean, and if you legacy, hey, we're going to put you wherever your time of a swim is. And it's going to be like a wave start, similar to this, but based off of where you're at in your ability.
You know, I totally agree with you. But, you know, then it comes down to what happens on the bike. I mean, I think looking at the Half Ironman World Championships and recognizing that the people that you see winning these events when there's men involved, and then you see who's winning these events when there's no men to draft, and it's different. And I think that there's a lot of people that benefit from the men out there. And even the men that we got into on the bike, I mean, they were ruthless. They would not, you know, we caught you. You know, these top women that are coming through, when we catch these guys, it's like, hey, we're already ahead of you if we've caught you. Just get out of the way. But they don't get out of the way, you know, and then they make these packs of people. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on out there and it's really frustrating. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the way they put us in the water. You know, they put you in the water 15 minutes behind these guys, and all these guys are going to swim 130s to 145s. We're going to come through all those guys. And then some of those guys, they're going to be better bikers. There's a reason why they're there. They're better cyclists or they're better runners, you know? And, yeah. Or the people that we're going to catch on the bike that had a good swim, but can't ride, you know? I just think that when you break the races up, now that I've seen it, I think it's a lot harder to draft and to pack up and to cheat. Purposely or not.
You're saying it's a lot more fair of a field.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I do. I mean, all the women that swim an hour or faster, are going to rip through those men, and they're going to get out of the water with all those guys that are swimming fairly fast. And then they're all good cyclists. And if you look at the top women's times, the top women who, the top swimmers, their bike times, they're significantly different than the girls that are, the women that are 5th and 10th and 15th,
Right. I mean, it would almost make sense for there to be venues that break up the day as well.
Right.
Because that would also eliminate some of that.
I totally agree. I think that the venue thing is huge. Sorry about that. I think that the venue thing is the double day venue has really proven to be just, I think, yeah, you get what I'm saying. I think that it's been a huge positive, at least for the half Ironmans. Yeah.
Right. So whenever you get out of the water, you have about an hour and 11 minutes here, just under that. You're in transition for less than 4 minutes. Are you putting on socks? Are you changing anything? I know you're taking your Blue 70 off and getting ready for the bike. What is this process like for you?
Yeah, I get out of the water. I've got my Blue 70 almost off by the time I get to transition, but it was really crazy. I think that because of where they put us in the water with the men this year, the timing, when we came to the stairs to get out of the water, it was insane. We waited to get out of the water. We literally stood there and waited for people to go up the stairs. There was nowhere for us to go and no way for us to get out of the water. It was just a huge line of people to get out of the water. And then when we got up the stairs, it was just massive people everywhere. And the volunteers were doing the very best that they could, but I'm confident they were overwhelmed. And I was directed to go the wrong way to get my bag. And honestly, it didn't really matter because I was so confused and there were so many people all over the place. If I had my brain working, I would have known where my bag was. I practiced that, but I actually ran past all the bags, had to go back to the bags, find my bag. So I'm now swimming upstream, trying to get through all these people to get back to my bag. The volunteers are trying so hard to get people to go where they're going. There's women trying to go into the men's tent. There's men trying, it was just complete chaos. When I got to the women's tent, I couldn't even step in the women's tent. And I'm so thankful for the woman that was standing outside the tent. I just looked at her and I said, "Can you help me?" And she said, "Yep." And I dumped all my gear on the ground. I literally grabbed my top. She helped me get my top on, and I grabbed my shoes and I ran away. I just left everything, she's like, "Leave it." I just ran away. I left everything on the ground and I ran to my bike and that's where I put my shoes on. And even trying to get to my bike, it was like, I was telling people, "Hey, I'm coming through," because they're walking around to get to their bikes because it's the men that are getting out at that point. We've all, think about who they are and where they're at in their age groups versus the rest of us that are still, kind of trying to have, maybe a shot at finishing, top 10, top 15 or whatever. And so, yeah, it was just mass chaos. And even that first 10 miles of the bike was mass chaos. So many people.
Right. I don't think a lot of people understand that 15 seconds more in transition will compound to more than a half mile to even a mile over the course of 112 miles because of that 15-second gap. Because you're that much further down the road, and then you have to still get on your bike and get going before you actually get on the bike together, like going down the Queen K together at the same time and point in time. You've lost time and a lot more than just 15 seconds.
That's right. And the other thing too, I think, is 80% of the field gets up water between an hour and 8 and an hour and 12 minutes? 80% of us get out of the water in that time zone. So you've got 80% of the women getting out of the water, and then you've got all these men that are 15 minutes behind us at least, if not more, coming out of the water then too. So it's just I can't even imagine what it must. I volunteered many, many years ago, back in 2010, but I was there only for the men, and then I moved. And so, it was when it was a mass start, right? So I was only there for the top pro men coming in, and then I was moved. So I have no idea what that must look like, but it must be overwhelming.
Right. There really doesn't seem like there could be a way to eliminate the big packs. That there was even an article from EMJ that they shared about what are the solutions for stopping the draft packs. And it's really hard for even in Kona, because everybody is at that upper echelon of performance already on all three sports. And if you get there at the same time, you get there at the same time.
And I have to tell you, I don't know if it's just the position that I end up in when I get out of the bike, because, or I'm like 40th out of the water, 30th to 50th out of the water. And so, once I get out on the Queen K, I don't see that stuff. I'm not running into those people drafting. I don't see those packs coming back, because maybe they're so far ahead of me, but I know they exist.
Right. I mean, they were at Texas this year by leaps and bounds. I don't know if you saw insane. That or not.
I did.
So as far as your bike, did you have a certain power, heart rate, or cadence goal? I know we talked a little bit about that in Worlds and also at Calgary, but has that changed for the full distance versus the 70.3?
So I ride by power, and we did change my goals for power. We upped them quite a bit, actually, and I was pretty excited that I did hit my target watts. I was looking for around 160 normalized power, which I ride about 165 to 170-ish for the half. So this was a pretty good jump, but we kind of broke the course up differently this year. And I used like the first hour to kind of get into the race. And then basically I used the middle section of the race. I raced it half Ironman pacing. And then about the last hour of the race, moved back into Ironman pacing again. And, if you had a crystal ball and you could definitely predict the weather, which you never really can on the Queen K or going to Hawaii, I probably would have held that half Ironman pacing longer had I known I wasn't going to be fighting wind. But everywhere I went, I was like, you got to remain patient. I know it's not blowing here, but it's going to be blowing in Waikloa. And then I get to Waikloa and I'm like, okay, but it'll be blowing in Kaihai. And it wasn't blowing in Kaihai, and I just did that all day. And I'm like, okay, but when I get to Hawaii, it's just going to be blowing sideways, and the whole day I was like, where is the wind? What is going on? And then to just, I was 22 minutes faster than what we predicted,
Wow.
Yeah. So at some point you have this little voice in your head saying you might really crater on the run because of this. But I was hitting all my targets, and I did stay right on target. There's the what if. There's a little bit of that voice of like, well, what if I had, just taken 5 more minutes out of that bike? What would have happened with the day? Would that have been the difference? And it would have been for a podium, but then does that crater you on the run? There's always the what ifs, right?
Right. But, so you really just took this in 3 big parts. You took the first 28 miles, the middle 56, and then the last 28 miles. And the middle 56 was all at like a 70.3 effort.
Yes, it was. Yep. That's exactly what we did. And the reason why is I have ridden that part of that course hundreds of times. I know that course. I can tell you where there's gum on the road. I can tell you where there's spray paint. I can tell you where, a broken bottle is. I can tell you where the wind, the whole thing. And I know how to ride that section of the course. And so after discussing it with my coach and talking to him about, it's also pretty much the half Ironman course, which I've done the half Ironman every year but one since 2006, 2005. Actually, it's every year but one since 2005. So this is a very, very familiar course to me. And so the confidence to do it and know that I could do it and be fine and okay was very much there. So yeah, it was definitely a different approach, but it really paid off.
Right. So As far as the bike course goes, did you see any wrecks, mechanicals, or flats, or anything like this?
Yeah, I actually coming into an aid station, and there's always what you saw and what you think happened and what really happened. So recognize this is what I think happened. But I was coming into an aid station. There was a gal. She came in on my left and came up around me and went to get the bottle of the guy in front of me. So I kind of scooted over and was going to go around her to get the next guy, right? And right as I actually had to make a defensive move. So she went to grab the bottle, but the guy didn't let go of the bottle. And she didn't let go of the bottle. And he took her straight down. Her bike, everything. She just went straight down. And she just started screaming. And that's just horrifying. And, I'm going 18 miles an hour at this point, and I kind of had to defensively move around. And you can see everybody rushing to that person. Your first instinct is, I need to stop and help this person. And then your next instinct is, I'm going to crash somebody behind me if I do that. There's a bunch of people around me trying not to hit this person as well. And there's plenty of people here. It's an aid station. What are you going to be able to do? So I kept on moving, but I never saw her again. So, either I hope she got back up and was able to keep going. You see that and your heart just breaks because of how much effort it takes to get to Kona and how easy it is to have something go wrong. But besides that, I didn't see anything. One thing I was really happy about is how many people were in penalty tents.
Really?
There's some people that I race against at mini races who cheat constantly and use other people on the course to cheat. And at one tent, I actually saw this individual and the two men that she's almost always with at every race I've ever been in with her. And they were all in a penalty tent, and it made my heart so happy. I was like, well, maybe it's, maybe the cost of cheating and going through the efforts to cheat like that caught up to them. I don't know, but there was a lot of people in penalty tents. Every single penalty tent had people in it.
Wow. So I know this isn't your first time on the Queen K, and you've done this course many times, and this is your fifth time at Kona. Or is it your fourth or fifth?
Fifth.
Fifth, okay. So what advice would you give someone to tackle this bike course that they might not know?
Practice being in the wind. I mean, if you can ride in the wind, even though we didn't have a windy year, if you can ride in the wind, you're going to have an advantage.
Is that more mental or as well physical? And because from a coach's standpoint, I'm sure you need a strong core for this. And because if the crosswind comes, you need to be able to balance yourself and have that while you're tucked in the aero position. So is that something else you'd want?
I think it's both, if you want to know the truth. I think that it's scary to feel like you're going to be blown off your bike. And I have been on that road many times where I was sure I was going to be blown off my bike. And I have been blown off my bike. I've been blown off my bike 3 times on that course. And there's lots of athletes that have been. And I think that, it's a white knuckle ride many, many times. And you mentally have to be in a space where if you react to that, you can make things worse. And physically, you have to just be strong enough to be able to stay in aero and, really lean into the front wheel and keep that front wheel down. People think it's the back wheel. People think riding a disc or a deep wheel in the back is an issue. Well, all your weight's on the back wheel. It's not the back wheel. It's always the front wheel. And if you can't, put your body weight into that front wheel and really press down in that physically, that's another thing that is going to be against you. And so I think it is very much a physical and mental hurdle that you have to get over riding in the wind. And I've ridden all over, and I think the only place I've ever had comparable winds is here in Alaska. So I don't think it's the easiest thing to go and find and be able to do either. And plus, it's a very hilly bike course. It's very hilly, it's very hot, and it's very windy. So, if you have the ability to race or train in those conditions, I recommend doing it.
Right. And it's not like you're coming over here weighing 200 pounds. You're at 116 and you're having
Right.
to really use muscles to push it down versus sheer weight.
Absolutely. Yep. Especially on the downhills. You're going really fast now too, on top of it. And, to get a 30-mile-an-hour crosswind hit you out of a rock cove, you're protected, and then all of a sudden you're not, and you've got a 30-mile-an-hour burst. It's scary. It's scary to feel your bike skip sideways when you're riding at 30 miles an hour,
Right. So whenever you start getting past the special needs and past the turnaround and you're making your way back to the actual transition to get out on the run, you're approaching miles 70, 80, and 90. How is your headspace during these times? Because I know you had a lot of anxiety leading up to it, a lot of stress. Has all that fallen to the wayside, or are you still kind of on edge?
No, I was over the moon by then, and I was really excited about how the bike was going. And in 2017, with a bike time that was almost 20 minutes slower, I was sixth off the bike. And so I was really excited of the possibility of where I might be getting off the bike. But of course, you're faster, so is everyone else. So even though I had a 20-minute-ish PR off the bike, I was actually 4 places further back. I was in 10th off the bike. But I was really, really excited about how fast the bike was. I was really excited about how fun it was. It really was fun. It was fun not to be stressed out about wind. It was fun to be able to really ride fast and enjoy the course. And I was feeling really good about staying on target for the watts. And so I actually was looking forward to the run. I was just kind of like, this day's going well, and felt really good and strong coming into transition, actually.
Okay. So when did your mindset actually shift then? Because going into the swim, you still had some nerves, but then on the later portion of the bike, it seems like that had already shifted.
I think as soon as I got on my bike, everything got better. I think that it was just like I got out of the water. I didn't drown. I didn't get attacked by jellyfish. It wasn't the swim time that I was hoping for, but my coach was at the top of Palani and told me what place I was. I was still happy to be in the top 30. I knew that top 30 was striking distance for me. So everything kind of just the process of like, let's get into this bike ride. We got 5 hours ahead of us kind of thing at that point. And I think that's really and probably where a lot of people's anxiety ends. I think once you get out of the water, you're just like, okay, I'm going to be fine,
Right. So the moral of the story is ride your bike.
Right. Right. Bike riding is so therapeutic mentally.
Man. So the goal was 160 watts normalized power. To get to this on your data screens, what are you actually looking at? Are you looking at 3 second, 5 second average and normalized as well? What are you trying to look at there?
It doesn't show normalized. It just shows average power. And so I have 3 second, and then I hit the lap button at the 28 mile, at the 56, so that, I could see what was average power for those segments.
Oh, so you don't have the auto lap on at 5 or 1 mile?
Nope.
Okay. So with the cadence, are you still wanting to hit your normal cadence, or are you wanting to hit a little bit normal?
Nope, totally. Go? I'm a 90 cadence girl, and it was dead on 90. It's so ingrained and rhythmic in me that I'm very, very much dead on 90.
Wow. So whenever you start getting towards the later portion of the bike ride, when you actually start seeing people start running on the run course and you start getting really close to getting off your bike, are you doing anything to start preparing to start running yourself, as from a mindset and nutrition standpoint?
Mainly just trying to pull back a little bit. I take my shoes off before I get off my bike. So pull back a little bit to do that well and not crash your bike and hit the people around you. But that's about it, just was really excited about hitting that 5:15. And I think I ended up being like 5:15.50 or something. And that's with, running your bike in and all that. So I was on cloud nine with that bike ride. It was a good day.
Wow. So as you get to transition, you hand off your bike. There is hundreds, if not thousands of spectators, volunteers just cheering on everybody. How do you harness this energy for the marathon to come?
Well, I think when you get into transition, you kind of get into this bubble of focus of like, I've got to get my bag. I've got to get my shoes on. I've got to, get this top off. Like you're doing all the little checklists. And it was funny because one of the volunteers was like, do you want sunscreen? And I was like, sure. And she was just coating me in sunscreen. And honestly, it just made me burst out laughing because I was like, okay, that's enough sunscreen. And she's like, oh, we have to get your legs. And she's just like lathering me in sunscreen. And honestly, if you look at my photos, you can see I'm just covered in chunks of sunscreen. And I just thought it was really funny and it was super nice of her. But I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much sunscreen on me. It's so bizarre. So for the first mile, I got a sponge somewhere. It must have been out of transition. I was actually like trying to sponge off the sunscreen because I was like, it was kind of oily. So that was kind of funny. And I actually at one point laughed at her. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of sunscreen. She's like, you can't have enough sunscreen. And I was like, okay. And the girl next to me just looked at me and she's like, that's a lot of sunscreen. So it was just really funny and super nice of those people. Can you imagine all those sweaty people? They must be putting sunscreen on all day. Oh my gosh. So, but yeah, I just got out of transition. And then once you get out, all the people, it is pretty exciting. You kind of get into it and you kind of realize you're like, okay, last leg, got to get this thing done.
Wow. I mean, I've never had a volunteer lather me in sunscreen like that. So thankfully I'm good. I usually just do 70.3, so I'm not too worried about it.
I've never had anybody put sunscreen on me before. I've never ever, I'm usually good and I don't, but she was just like, let me, I was like, okay. It's just pretty funny.
Gosh. So for the marathon to come, what was your goal time that you wanted to hit for this? Did you have like a pace or a heart rate goal or a cadence goal? What was this looking like for you?
It was all about pace goal, and I was hoping to be able to hold right around, 8:30s as an average. And my biggest problem is staying in control on Ali'i. I've always overrun Ali'i Road. Wow. And so it's just too exciting. There's so many people. It's so much fun. You're so amped up. And I just really worked hard on Ali'i this year to slow down. And then we made some changes to my approach. Usually I don't walk any aid stations. We added a couple of aid stations, which was, in hindsight, I don't think I needed. But again, you're like, well, I still had one of the best runs, even though it was a slower run than what I've done the last 2 years. I never lost a position during the run at any point, and I gained 3 positions on the run. And that's the first year that I've done that.
You just went forward, not any backwards.
Right. Like last year when I got off the bike in 6th, I ended up finishing the day in 8th. And I got passed many times and passed people many times during that. This year I got off the bike in 10th and moved myself into 7th. Not one woman in my age group ever passed me, and very few people passed me on the run, in fact. And so very few women as well. So I was just really happy about that and happy that I was able to be consistent. And also that's the best I've felt at the end of this run. Normally I get to about mile 20. The wheels start to come off at mile 23. I start to break down mentally. And by 24, it is ugly. It is really, really ugly. I mean, to the point that, you're climbing that last hill to Palani and, you're holding back from bursting into tears and you just want to walk off the course. And, like, I'm never doing this again, and I'm really happy that this year when I got to that point and I was told, hey, 7th place is right up the hill. And I had it in me to go run her down. It was like, okay, I'm going to go catch that girl. And if I don't, I'm going to work really hard, to the finish to try. And so it's always kind of a bummer to be the person that gets passed. And I've had that happen and it sucks. but I'm really proud and pleased with the fact that I had it in me to do it.
Right. Now, we know we talked a little bit about your nutrition plan earlier on the bike and the run, but what exactly was this for the run, and did you hit your nutrition plan on the run, or did that sway any?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty consistent with this. I like the salted caramel goo, and I take one of those salted caramel goos when I start the run, and then pretty much every 4 miles I do another one of those goos, and then, like I said, it's all the Red Bull and cola I can possibly grab. And so I just really believe to be fueled by sugar and caffeine on the run. That's it. More sugar, more caffeine.
Wow. So how would you know if the sugar is wearing off, and what would you do if it does?
I don't know, because that probably has never happened to me, because I literally drink cola and Red Bull at every single aid station that they will give it to me at both ends. And then with the goos, every 30-ish minutes, it's, I might as well just be mainlining sugar and caffeine. It's like a constant drip. So it works really well for me. And knock on wood, I think the only times I've ever had issues with my stomach on the run is when I haven't done my nutrition on the bike very well.
Right. On the run, did you have any back pain? I mean, being hunkered down in the aero position on your bike for that long, a lot of people have back pain. No,
I always have, with me, it's structural, like the hip. And everything's, I think it doesn't matter who you are. I think everything starts to hurt by mile 20. I just think that by mile 20, all the little aches and pains start to sneak up. And by mile 23, you're so close to the finish and your brain's mentally ready to shut down. And your body's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're begging it for just 3 more miles. And so I didn't really have anything from the bike. I think it's just overall fatigue by the time you get to the end of the marathon.
Right. So to back up a little bit, I'm sure you're aware of what the hot corner is here. How was your experience through here the first time?
Well, I absolutely love the hot corner for so many reasons. And one of my most favorite reasons is a gal that I train and coach for many years now, Laura Jorgensen, and her family. They are the volunteer coordinators for that corner. And so when I come through that corner, it's amazing. The people that are there screaming and yelling for me, and they all run along. And some days, or I should say some years, I can't even understand what they're saying. They're just all screaming and yelling at me. And I'm just like, oh my God, okay. And, but it's really energizing and exciting. And so for me, it's probably one of my favorite spots on the run course, because we get to go by there, essentially 3 times. And so they're there the whole day, and it's pretty cool.
Wow. So as you're heading out to the energy lab, you're getting closer to being out there with pretty much no spectators, no volunteers except the ones at the aid stations. What is this like for you mentally going into this for the 5th time? I know they changed the course a little bit, but you're out there a little bit longer now.
I definitely prepped for that this year. It's really taken its toll on me in years past. I did almost all of my training runs, all my long runs in this area this year, purposely out there all by myself, plodding along. And it really made a difference. And also helped me realize it's not as long as it seems. So I think all of those things helped, but it's still really, you feel kind of abandoned out there. Nobody feels good. Nobody's high-fiving anybody anymore. Nobody's saying good job or you looking good. Everybody just kind of, is in their own little happy place in their head. And volunteers are still really excited and helpful with getting you through, but you just kind of hate everything at that point. You're just like, why did I do this to myself? This year, though, I felt much stronger and much better on that road than I ever have.
Wow. How did you get there to that point? Do you attribute that to just the training out there on it or something else?
I think that, and then also just really staying in control on Ali'i. You know, in years past, I've overrun on Ali'i, and I've really paid the price for it out there. So staying in control and being patient, I think, was the biggest factor.
Okay. So a lot of athletes, whenever you start getting into those lonely places of a marathon or even some of the lonelier places on the bike ride, really struggle with why they're out in the first place and what is actually their driving factor of even doing these events in the first place. What is your reason of why you want to do this in the first place? Why are you out there?
Well, I've had a lot of people ask me this question, and I always give the same answer. It's kind of one of those things that I don't answer. But I will say that one of the things that does keep me going is thinking about all the people that help me and thinking about all the people that support me. And I think about all the people that are sitting looking at these, you know, the little tracker and watching online, and, you know, how exciting it is to watch the race on those levels, and how much when I'm watching people, how much I'm willing them to just stick it out and just go a little bit harder and, you know, all of those things. And so I really do think about that stuff. I think about all the random people that might be following me and that are sending me energy. It's so silly, but I swear I think about it, and I swear it helps me. I don't want to let those people down, and I just appreciate them. I appreciate the support that people give me. And yeah, so I think when I get into those spaces, those are the things that I really rely on. And then I also think about all the time and energy I've spent on this sport. And I always consider this. I don't want to cross the finish line and look back and be like, what if, or woulda, coulda, shoulda, or I don't like that feeling. I want to finish and know that was it. That was what I had. And so I talk to myself a lot. You know, I ask myself, I'm like, can you go any faster than this? You know, is this it? What happens if you push a little bit harder here? And I just think that by doing so, I just have the best race I can have on that day.
Right.
And so I know that doesn't answer your question about the why, but I do keep the why a little bit closer to my heart. I think I share a lot of things. I just think that's one of those things that I'm just going to keep close.
I understand. So I had a lady on here earlier where the people that she uses as a support system, she actually writes their names down and all of them. And she had this kind of work backwards on her where she fell off on the run and a little bit on the bike. How would you deal with that if it started working backwards for you, meaning where if the wheels fell off at mile 10 and you couldn't even run anymore and you're having to walk a lot more than normal, now you are letting these people down in your mind. How are you going to work through that? Because now it's like you're letting them down in your mind, and that's just a negative rabbit hole there.
I have to tell you, I struggled with this kind of stuff a lot many, many years ago, and I've kind of been able to get beyond that because the phase that I go into is you don't know what's going on around you. You don't know who's where in the field, and you don't know who else is having a hard day or the best day ever. And I just always tell myself, you have to keep going and you have to keep believing that you're having the best day you can have today. And that's the thing, you know, I crossed the finish line and that was the best day I could have had. It really was. I think I could have gotten more time out of my bike, and I believe that, but I also believe there could have been huge consequences on the run for it. You don't know. It's easy to say sitting here talking, right? That I had 5 more minutes in me, or it's easy to say I shouldn't have walked those 2 aid stations that we threw in. But then I'm telling you, I had the best run I've had in the last 6 miles ever there. Is it because of those aid stations? Is it because of me not pushing those 5 minutes? I mean, people are really good at being able to say in hindsight, X, Y, and Z, right? But the reality is that I always ask myself, where would I rather be? And the answer has always been right here doing this. And so I think for me, I fall into that rabbit hole before the race starts. But once the race starts, I know I'm giving it all I have. And if I had to walk and things were going sideways, I would absolutely know that was all I had in that moment.
So living with no regrets.
Pretty much, right? I guess. I mean, I think we all kind of regret things, but I try not to. Yeah.
For the most part. Now, I know that you put up a picture on your Facebook, and it was kind of almost emotional for me to see, because I was tracking you on race day, and to see before he caught up about how this picture captured it all and basically why you loved being in the sport whenever the water was hitting the rock wall and all that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that feeling that you experienced right there.
You know, I think there's certain things, like everybody has those certain sights or certain sounds or smells that bring memories back, or that become memories and become moments that you always reflect on. And for some reason, right there along that rock wall, right, it was, right where right before Huggos. And for some reason, right in there was just enough silence that I could hear people's feet hitting the ground. And it was so rhythmic. And just to hear my feet and the people around me, and then the water, coming in and out, and then to have those people cheering you on and to see the chalk on the ground, it just really turned into like an inspirational moment for me. It was one of those moments of, like I said, there's just no place else I would rather be. There was no other experience I would rather be having than what was happening in this moment. And I can remember seeing the photographer and thinking, I hope he got the water in that photo. Like, I remember thinking that, like, in my head, though, it was really funny. There were huge waves out there. Like, in my mind, with how much the sound of the water, it was like massive waves, and so it was funny for me to be like, there's no waves out there when I saw the photo. But, yeah, it was just kind of one of those moments during the race. And it actually inspired me for quite a while. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. I am glad I'm here suffering with these people that are amazing, and, all these amazing athletes and volunteers and all these people that support these amazing athletes and all these families. And I mean, every single person that was out there cheering someone on is beaming with pride for somebody. It's just such a really amazingly happy, positive thing.
Wow. I've only had a few moments like that in a race. Just a few. I mean, those are really hard and very few to come by. It's just,
I agree.
I can think of one off the top of my head of when I was in Philadelphia for the half marathon there, and that's about it. Like, I don't really remember another one off it would have to do some soul searching for the next one. So whenever you start getting to mile 23, 24, and 25, you're actually feeling pretty good at this point.
Well, I wouldn't say I was feeling pretty good. I don't think that's a statement that I would ever make. I just wasn't slowing down, and I was able to continue the pace that I was holding. And this is when my coach and Brendan and all the people, you come back onto the course and there's all these people and all the support, and it kind of gives you this little boost. But then there's this horrible, horrible hill you have to run, at mile 23 to 24-ish to 25. And it's daunting. And there was this really strong woman that was running right by me. She was in front of me just a little bit, and I was pacing her really well, and she was really strong. She was running just a little too fast for me. And I just kept trying to hold on to her. She was in a different age group, but she was just really rhythmic, and she had somebody with her. And I think he was worried about me, and figured out I wasn't in her age group. And at one point he kind of fell back and he was like, just stay with her and stay with her pacing. And I just looked at him, I'm like, I'm trying, like, this is it, and, everybody around us, the men that we were running through, this woman and I were cheering us on, and she found a different gear and was able to keep going and sped up. And I think it was because she was actually probably running to a podium finish. And, I was just trying to catch the girl that was in 7th. Not that that's any, less of an achievement. I'm just saying that I think she finished on the podium. So at any rate, for me, it was just willing myself to the end for the most part. Yeah.
So as you're approaching the last few miles here, I'm sure you're aware of your overall pace is a little bit more than the 8:30 pace that you initially wanted. It slowed down to about 8:43 a mile versus 8:30. How did you give yourself enough grace to still feel accomplished on the day?
Well, the first thing is that I think that everybody has this idea of what they're going to run, and then they run what they run. Like you're like, I'm going to do this, and then what happens. So I never put a whole lot of pressure on myself when it comes to the run and the pacing. But I also, last year, I didn't walk until mile 9, and then I didn't walk again until 14, whereas this year I actually walked through the aid station at 4 and then the aid station at 10. And, those were, and another aid station along the way. I can't remember which one, but they were aid stations that I would not have walked through in the previous year. And, so, you always think that you can walk through an aid station quickly, but just slowing down and starting up again is hard, especially when it gets later into the day. And so I was just a little bit disappointed with the run time, but I'm also just really happy with how it turned out too. It's kind of one of those balance things. Like maybe if I'd gone backwards, I would have felt a little bit differently, but I was just pretty happy with being able to stay fairly consistent.
All right. So as you're getting closer and closer to the finish line, I'm sure you can hear the roars of the crowd and you can see the barriers start lining the road here. What is this like to actually be in the finish chute again at Kona?
Well, first off, I really wanted to enjoy the finish chute in Kona this year, but I passed the girl that was in 7th at mile, I think it was like 25.7. Like I had like half a mile to go. And when I came around her, I didn't think that she was just going to let me come around her. I wouldn't let somebody just come around me. And so
that far into it.
Yeah. When I made the decision to go around her, because I could see her and I was kind of trying to sort out like, when can I really do this? And if I do this, am I really going to be able to hold this pace to stay in front of her? And is she going to try to, kick it in and outrun me? And so when I went and I ran scared all the way to the finish line, and I was way hyperventilating. I was way hypoxic, anaerobic. And I think, unfortunately, stopping immediately, I took 2 steps. And it's funny because I've seen the video. I didn't remember any of it. It's only after I saw the video. I took 2 steps, took a step sideways. A man showed up there who I now realize he finished behind me and came up next to me. I thought he was there to help me, so I grabbed him. That poor man, he was probably barely walking and trying to hold himself up, and I'm like about to pass out, and I'm grabbing him thinking he's there to help me. And I don't remember a whole lot more because I go off camera, but I know that I passed out because they put me in a wheelchair. So, and then when I came to, I was like trying to explain to them that it was just because I was breathing so hard and then just stopped moving, and then I thought my blood pressure dropped, but then I went out again, and that was it. They didn't really want to have a conversation about anything else. And so I was just a little bit bummed out that I didn't really get to enjoy the finish line.
Wow. And that's not to mention that within that minute and 5-second span between the time you finish and the next 2 girls finish within that next minute and 5 seconds.
Right. So, I mean, they were all coming and I knew it. So.
I mean, I started looking at some of the results this year, and I mean, you're really in shape and you've been doing this for many years, but yet the girl who won your age group came in nearly an hour ahead of you.
Well, you understand that woman won overall amateur women. Like, I've never seen her before. I don't know anything about her. It was very shocking to have someone in our age group not only win the overall of our age group by over an hour, but she won the entire amateur race. So it was kind of odd. I mean, if you think about it in terms of she's best women in the world.
44 years old.
No, she's 40. She has to be 45 to 49.
She has to be 45 then. Her age online says 44.
Yeah, so she must age group up at the end of this year, and so she got to race as a 44-year-old. But because her age on the 31st is 45, so she was a year younger than the rest of us on top of it. So that's probably some of it. But also, if you think about it like this, the very best in the world racing against each other, if you look at years past, you'll see that time difference isn't so big. So to have somebody come in and win by that much is really substantial.
That's 10%.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it besides it was very shocking. And the girl that finished second overall is a friend of hers. They train and race together. So it's, I don't know a lot about her, but it looks like she's an amazing runner.
Yeah, man. So being that you've been to Kona 5 times now, what is some advice that you give first timers to do next year?
Enjoy the day. Enjoy all of it. Don't worry so much about the time as much as just trying to remember as much of the journey, because you don't get another first time.
Wow. I think that's pretty much the going trend. Enjoy it all. If you get there, just enjoy it.
Yeah, because the second time, it's different. And the third time, it's different. And the fourth time, and the fifth time, you stress out really bad.
And you start trying new things on race day.
Right, exactly.
Man.
You get really crazy. If I make it back, my very biggest goal is not to stress out next year. Honestly, that's my biggest goal.
Right. So we covered a lot about your race at Kona. Do you have anything else you want to add about it?
You know, I just want to say thanks to everybody out there, and thanks to all the people that support me, and, you know, all my sponsors. It's a big list of them. And I just want to thank all those people out there that do our sport, you know, and that have a passion for it and love it and continue to just better themselves. I don't think people realize how inspiring everyone is to each other. And I think it's just really special. And I think we have something really neat in our sport that other sports don't have. So it's pretty cool that we get to ride and race with our pro athletes. And they're people that, you know, toe the line with us. And I think, you know, from the brand new person to the person that wins their age group at amateur races to the winner in Kona, I just think that I understand what it takes, you know, and so I have a lot of respect. And yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody out there.
Wow. So how can athletes follow you?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook at Rebecca Beaker McKee. That's my athlete page, or just Rebecca McKee. You can find me on Instagram at Rebecca Beaker McKee, or Coach Rebecca McKee as well. And yeah, those are the best ways to find me.
Nice. So being that this is your third time on, and I've already asked you the next two questions, the next one's pretty fun. And that's, if all triathletes and endurance athletes had a set of headphones on and you had the mic to tell all the athletes and triathletes and endurance athletes a message, what message would you want to tell them?
Well, I would tell them to never stop dreaming, to never stop living their life to the fullest, and to never give up, because, you know, I've talked about this before. I gave up my dreams to go to Kona. I didn't think I would make it. And it took a lot of people having faith in me and supporting me to change that attitude. And I'm so glad that they did. And I just want to tell people just to not give up.
Wow. Well, Rebecca, it's been so awesome diving in about another race. And you also have Arizona coming up in a few weeks.
Oh my gosh, I do. And, you know, I got pretty sick after Kona and had laryngitis. We had to reschedule this interview because I couldn't talk. So I'm trying not to be anxious and stressed out about Arizona. I'm going, and I love the course there, and I've always had a good time. So I'm just going to go do what I can do and try to have the best day that I can have.
Wow. Well, good luck at Arizona. I'll be tracking you for sure, and love to have you back on after Arizona if you'd be up for spending some more time with me. I'm still going to be doing this little podcast, and love to have you back on.
If you and your listeners aren't bored of me yet, I'd love to come back.
I think the most I've had someone on is 5 times so far, and I'm always
all right. I'm going for the record.
Awesome. Well, have a good day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, Terry. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website, CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.